Entertainer Riley Knoxx joins us to talk about her journey as a trans woman and how becoming the #1 Beyonce impersonator saved her life. Jason Wallace, director of the DC Mayor's Office of Fathers, Men, and Boys, stops by to talk about the initiatives that are aimed at changing the negative views of black fathers in multimedia. All of this and more coming up next on One-on-One with Cory George, so stay tuned. There are some conversations that we must make comfortable in every household and society as a whole. There are also moving stories of perseverance and purpose that not only uplift others, but inspire us all to think and reach higher in hopes of positively affecting someone else. Throughout my journey, I've been fortunate enough to have been a part of some amazing conversations and witnessing wonderful stories of transformation, including my very own. And now I share them with you. Your stories, your narratives, our inspiration. I'm Cory George, and this is One-on-One. And thank you for joining us. I'm sitting here with the #1 Beyonce impersonator, Riley Knoxx. But she is much more than just an entertainer. Inside her lives a warrior with a passion for living her best life. She is also a positive inspiration for the trans community. Her journey is noteworthy, and we are so glad to have her here with us today. And so thank you so much for joining us. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm glad to be here.
So before we start, the main reason why I wanted you on the show is because the first time I met you, I finally bridged the gap of understanding what the struggle could have been for your community. My first introduction to the trans community was my cousins Pat and Danielle.
Yeah.
And I remember them for as long as my memory goes back. I did not know them any other way. But little did I know what they probably had to go through in the 60s and 70s, 80s, just to live, just to be themselves.
Just to walk down the street.
Absolutely. And I grew to appreciate that as I grew up, and coming into DC, as we will talk about later, how sometimes opening your eyes to a bigger type of situation shows you like the progress in certain areas. So the first question I have for you is, where are you from?
Well, I've lived in DC longer than I've lived anywhere else. So if people ask me, I usually just say I'm from DC. But I was originally born in LA, and my mother sent me to live with my grandmother in South Carolina.
Wow.
And that was a big shock because it was, my mother sent me to live with my grandmother simply because of the way my grandmother raised her. She thought that, it would be great for me to be raised that way too.
So this wasn't because she noticed anything. It was just more so she just
thought it would be a better way for me to be raised because that's the way she was raised.
As opposed to being in LA, probably.
Yeah, well, just my grandmother has different values and different religious values.
Wow.
So that was very, very different for someone who knew at the age of 5 that I was transgender.
And that was the next question.
Or that I was going to be a girl. I didn't know the word.
So that was the next question is, how old were you when you felt different?
So there's 2 things I knew for sure.
Okay.
I knew I was going to be an entertainer, and I knew that I was going to be a woman. I didn't know how it was going to happen.
Wow.
I didn't know, and as a kid, I just kind of thought it was going to happen like naturally. I just kind of, this was kind of weird. And then when my sister started to develop, and then I started to develop in a different way, I was just kind of like, But the reason I say I knew I was going to be an entertainer and a woman is because at 5 years old, I used to run around with a pillowcase on my head, pretending it was long hair, and a microphone, well, not a microphone, but a flashlight in my hand, pretending it was a microphone. And I would run around singing Whitney Houston songs. And so everybody always knew, oh my God, like he's going to sing, he's going to be whatever.
Right.
And I was just like dying because as far back as I can remember, at 5 years old, being told, stop sitting like that.
Right.
Stop walking like that. Stop talking like that. Stop playing in your sister's hair. Stop playing with her Barbies. You better not be playing with her Barbies. Every Matchbox car, every truck, every ball, everything. It was ingrained in me like, you are a boy. So they knew that something was different. I think they thought like suppressing it was the best way because they didn't want me to grow up and be what they used a derogatory term to describe what I was going to be. And so I didn't know the correct word for it. And so I just pray to God, like, why am I different? Because religion was such a big thing, living with my grandmother. I used to pray to God thinking, like, why am I so different? Like, why am I, like, why am I so different from everybody? And then I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. I couldn't share it with anybody. So I just rather not play with other kids. Because I wasn't allowed to play with the girl toys and I didn't want to get dirty with the boys. Right. So I would stay in my room and and just create art and draw and paint and, make little skits and sing and
Right.
pretend like I was on stage. It was really crazy, but it was my way of coping as a kid, and it kind of shaped who I am now. Yeah.
So, okay, so let's take out the religion aspect because
Yeah.
I think that's heavy enough.
Yeah.
But coming from a black family
Yeah.
in the South,
Yeah.
even if religion wasn't on the table,
Yeah.
it would have still been hard, right?
Yeah, it would have been hard either way, because even if, religion aside, my family it was unheard of back then. I'm 38 years old. So, 38 years ago, it was like, you can't do that. Like,
Right.
and then in the South, it's like, I think I used to see like one person that I now know was what's called transgender,
Right.
walking down the street, and they would always tell me, don't look over there. Like, they would make sure that I didn't even look at her
Right.
walking by. And it was crazy because my childhood, when I think back at my childhood, I think of all the things I was told that I was doing wrong, and all the things that were that I wasn't supposed to be, and not like just, as a child being allowed to be free, and, being in, a black family and in the South was, like, no, you're not going to do that. And I had a lot of male cousins who thought that roughing me up would make me more masculine, and that didn't work at all.
Well, and I think that's a normal thing when in terms of being a young boy, and we often expect the boyhood experience.
Yeah.
The sports, and because I am the least sports inclined. I was telling my crew earlier, I can barely walk up a flight of stairs. That's just not my discipline.
Really, you don't look like you have played football or something.
No, I'm skilled in sitting down.
Yeah.
I'm very skilled in
Yeah.
sitting down. But as you say, people who look at me say I look athletic.
Yeah.
My entire family, most of the men have played football, mostly and or basketball, but I came out wanting to write.
Yeah.
I came out wanting to study music.
Yeah.
If I had my choice and if I was supported, I probably would have been on Broadway.
Yeah.
And that was a deep burgeoning thing I couldn't say because what the definition of manhood was at that time.
Yeah, and you know what? I always think like when you are, more so than any other person growing up, if you are a black male, you're taught to be like strong, and you're taught to be macho, and anything less than that is soft. If you love a man, then you must be soft. If you, are effeminate, then you must be like, what I call triable, like don't try me, you know what I mean? For some reason, people think that you're, like they can mess with you if you're like that, and think that you're less than it, or think that, there's just one way to be if you are a black male. And I just didn't fit into any of that.
Well, it's interesting now because now the conversation in modern times is trying to undo the toxic masculinity because
Yeah.
our black men are feeling each other because
Yes.
we're not open. We don't have that mechanism in us, which is part of the work that I love to do. So I do appreciate you talking about that specifically.
Yeah.
But what I want to find out for you is, I know you said at 5 you knew,
Yes.
but when did you decide to adamantly say, this is my journey, I'm going to go through with living my life on my terms?
So it was around about 16 years old that I realized, okay, I know who I want to be. I know what I want to be. And usually at that age, you're figuring out who you want to be anyway. I already knew. It was no longer about like, who do I want to be? What do I want to do when I grow up? It was about, now that I know what I want to do, what am I going to have to do to get through it? Like, what doors I'm going to have to knock down to get there? What are the next steps? And for me, it was to get the hell away from my parents. And so that's why I ran away, and I came to DC.
Wow.
And DC embraced me in a way that I never expected, and it was very strange because I knew no one here, and all of my friends that I made were older than me, and they kind of like watched over me and didn't let me go too far, but they let me make my mistakes and just let me live. And I met people who were like me, like people,
Yeah.
like I went to my first club and I was like, oh my God, like she's like me, like, oh my God, that's what I want to be, And I befriended those girls and they helped me. And that's why I feel such a strong need to pay it forward
Absolutely.
for other girls that are like me, because someone did it for me. All those girls taught me the right thing to do
Right.
and the right way to go about it so I didn't look busted and, all of those things back then. And I was so young and impressionable, but also just, that's why I say, like, I feel like I grew up in DC because I
Yeah.
really, like, I learned so much on how to be me.
Now, Now tell me, how did it feel to finally be embraced openly when you came here, as opposed to having to run away
Yeah.
because you were not embraced, and now in DC you get all of this unexpected love?
It was overwhelming, but in a good way. It's still overwhelming sometimes, especially now, that trans people are being embraced and talked about and included in so much, and we see them on TV, like we're everywhere. So it's still kind of like, wow, like this is something I never thought would happen. Like I never thought that I would be embraced in the way that I was. And I think that's why I have such a loyalty to DC, which is why I still live in DC, no matter how much fame I acquire. I love being here in DC. I love performing in DC, because DC was here for me when I had no one. Yeah.
So you're in DC, right?
Yeah.
I know the story.
Yes.
But I want you to tell the audience, how did you end up becoming a Beyonce impersonator?
I ended up going to a club with someone that I was dating, and there were all these, at the time, drag queens there at this club, and they were all, I was just in awe, like, oh my God, like there were trans people and there was gay people and there were drag queens and there were all these people, and I was just like, oh my God, like this is incredible, And they said to me, like, you're really pretty, like you should do this. And I'm just like, no, even though I knew that I wanted to be an entertainer,
right,
but I didn't know how it was going to come about. I knew it was going to happen, didn't know how. And so they were like, no, you bring a wig and a dress. And I was like, okay, on Sunday. And I was just so nervous. And they kind of just literally pushed me out onto the stage, pushed me out onto the stage. And then I realized once I was on stage that I didn't look like myself, and no one was expecting me to be myself, so I could be uninhibited and act in a way, because I was really shy. Believe it or not, I used to be shy. And so it broke me out of my shyness, because instantly I just transformed. And I still have pictures of my first performance where all of the queens came out the back and they were like clutching their pearls, like, oh my God, like this little person who was just so shy came out and just, did this song. And after that, I was just kind of bit by the bug. I was just like, this was so amazing. They're like, you want to do it again, don't you? And I was just like,
so you liked the feeling. So you liked not only entertaining, but you liked what it gave to you.
Yeah. Madonna has a song called, on her Ray of Light album, I always remember it's called Drowned World, My Substitute for Love. And she talks about how fame and being on the stage can be like a substitute for love, because you have all those people in the audience screaming and cheering for you, and it feeds something inside of you. Like, people don't understand that me being on stage, while I'm giving them something, my job is to help them forget about their problems and sort of be like therapy for them. That's what entertainment is.
Right.
They give me so much more than I give them. And for me, being on stage has been that for 19 years now. And back then I didn't understand the magnitude of it, but looking back now, it was a big tool in helping me become more of myself. It helped me get out of caring so much what people thought about me, that the things that people would say or do that made me question who I was or what I thought about myself. Like, I got all of that from performing. I got so much from performing, And it didn't start off with Beyonce. The first song I ever performed was a Janet Jackson song on the Velvet Rope Tour album. And so that was 2000. 2003, Beyonce came out with Crazy in Love.
Right.
And it was played everywhere. And I ended up performing the song. And someone saw me perform the song and was like, oh my God, you have to perform that at my birthday party. Performed it at the birthday party, got a standing ovation, and that night was dubbed DC's own Beyonce. And I thought, like, I gotta, like, this might be something. Like, there might be something to this. Like, I need to study her and watch every tape and every mannerism and every single thing, to the point where I don't need to do that now. It's just innate. Something transforms when I'm on stage, and it's just, it's a strange thing that happens there. But I can't even explain it or describe it. When I watch it back, I rarely watch it, but when I do watch myself perform, I'm just like, who is that? Because it's just sort of like, it's me channeling someone else. It's not me, know. But it is so much more than just me standing on the stage holding a mic and dancing and learning routines and remembering that. It gives me so much more than I ever thought it would.
And this is a great time for our first break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about her journey from being a Beyonce impersonator to meeting and starring alongside Taylor Swift. So stay tuned.
Queen is just my everything.
His smile did it. His smile, his eyes, his knowledge. My landlord, he decided that he wanted me to move based on the fact that I was transgender. Let's just respect people in everyday life for just being human.
We are back, and if you're just tuning in, I'm sitting here with the lovely Riley Knoxx, and we've been talking about her journey and her becoming a renowned Beyonce impersonator. But now I want to talk to her directly about her connection with Taylor Swift. So I want you to tell them how that happened.
So my manager got an email saying that someone, a big megastar, wanted Riley to impersonate Beyonce in a video. We didn't know who it was, and they
What
were
did you think of that email first? Like, so
well, we
did you
thought
think it
that
was serious? Or
no, we thought it was we thought it was like a scam.
a scam or a
Yeah.
prank? Okay.
Yeah, because we get emails all the time.
Right.
Not usually scams, but it just kind of just seemed like,
Seedy.
who is this megastar? Like, we're just
Yeah.
kind of like, but they wouldn't let us know until we signed an NDA because it was top secret at the
Yeah,
time.
okay.
Yeah, so they wouldn't let us know, and I'm just like, oh, is it? Like, I want to know so bad, and so my manager's just like, we just don't work like we don't operate like that.
Right.
So like, she's like, let me have a conversation, and so she called me while I was about to play Dina Jones in Dreamgirls on stage, and she had been calling, and I got the phone, looked at my phone, I had like 13 missed calls. I'm like, what is wrong with you, girl? And she's like, I was about to drive to DC right now. She's like, you won't believe it, but Taylor Swift wants you to play Beyonce in her video. And I'm like, what? She's just like, yeah. And I was like, what am I doing? She's like, I don't know. They won't tell us what exactly you're doing. They just assured me that it was not going to be something negative. And we were like, this was on a Sunday. They're like, you have to be on set to film on Thursday. So we left on Wednesday to go to LA. Didn't get my flight information until the night before, so we still didn't. We were like, is this really still happening?
Right.
Making phone calls and all this stuff. She was, working behind the scenes doing all of that. And I'm just packing my bag like, okay, if it's God's plan, we're going to go to LA and shoot a video with Taylor Swift. And I showed up on set, and they took my phone away, and they checked in my phone, and then I went through a few checkpoints and security things, and they had a driver for me.
Mm-hmm.
He drove me to the dressing room, and was sitting in the dressing room for a while with all the other talent that was in the just sitting back there for a while, because it was raining, one of those rare rainy days
Okay.
in LA. And in comes Taylor Swift. And she literally, because I'm standing close by the door of the dressing room, she runs straight to me and kind of jumps into my arms and is just like, oh my God, thank you for doing this. Like, you don't know how much I appreciate. Thank you so much. I'm so happy you could do this. I'm like, are you kidding me? I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Right.
I had nothing else to do.
Right.
It was funny because they said that Taylor handpicked Riley to be in the video. And normally that is, Taylor's people found Riley and whatever. And Taylor's like, thanks for sharing your story. And I'm like, you know my story? She's like, yeah. She's like, I handpicked you. I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, I stalked your Instagram, your Facebook, like your YouTube, all of that, read your NPR articles, all the interviews. She's like, I read everything. I looked at all your videos. So you never know who's watching you.
Absolutely.
And that's how I got cast in the video. Like, people don't understand, like, for most people, social media is just like kind of like fun or like how to keep in touch with their family or whatever, who's, distant family or whatever. For me, it is a business. Social media is a business, and that's how I got booked on a people always say, did you audition? I'm like, no, I've never auditioned for anything in my life. But it was Taylor Swift looking at my Instagram.
But it's amazing because I had this conversation last week with someone, and I said, it's one thing to put yourself out there, but it's another thing when people request you. That's a different type of validity.
It feels good after 19 years.
Yeah, it does.
It does, because I worked really hard, to prove myself and, sometimes just even prove to myself that I could do something. And, I've gotten to a point now in my career where I'm not thinking about, like, how do I top the next thing, just as long as I'm being true to what I love doing and to what I do, and, hopefully somebody's going to love it. But it really was just kind of like This is amazing that someone
Yeah.
as big as her, who doesn't even follow anyone on
Right.
Instagram, but has 128 million
Yeah.
followers, just handpicked me, and it felt really good, and became friends with her right there on the
Yeah.
spot.
I saw the pictures on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, I think one
Yeah.
only.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that must say a lot to the little boy growing up who didn't know where his trajectory would go.
I never imagined that.
And also a testament of patience, because you said 19 years.
Oh my God.
You know,
Well, 19 years, it's been a great 19 years. I've
yeah,
done a lot of things.
It's been a lot of growth up
Yeah.
to that point. So
Yes.
it wasn't just, okay, I'm going to just drop in, and like the version that you are now is not the same version 17 years
Oh,
ago,
no.
even 5 years ago.
Not even last year.
Yeah. So that's why I say that you are an inspiration, because I think that in terms of representation, well, for me, you are one of the standards to follow.
Thank you. That's
And I
really-
say that because I'm a little older than you, and you may also agree that in multimedia back in the day, the representation of trans women was more of
It was negative.
it was negative, it was comical, it was satirish.
Yep.
And now, with
Yeah.
shows like Pose and everything else, which it even opened my eyes, because although I grew up at the time of the ballroom scene, I didn't know anything about it, because I
Yeah.
was from Texas. I didn't know a lot.
Yeah.
But it also introduced me to their struggle, but what the ball scene meant to them in terms of family.
Yes.
So in your quick opinion, what do you feel shows like that bring to the psyche of people who didn't know what that was before?
That show makes me so happy, because it's not only about trans women. There's trans actresses, there's trans writers, trans directors. I'm friends with a lot of the girls on the set, so it just warms my heart that our story's being told on our own terms. It's not like people just researching and trying to figure
Right.
out. It's people who've actually lived this, or had friends that lived this, or died at the hand of someone who didn't accept them. And it's amazing, because when I was growing up, I had no one. I had no one to look up to.
Right,
That's why I
yeah.
say, if you're a trans person growing up now, you have tons of people representing you and positive representation. I did not have that. And I just can't imagine what my life would have been like had I been that little boy watching a show like Pose and seeing that, something positive, and, seeing a representation of what I am. And it's just amazing to me, to see that, because, it's not just trans women telling our story, but trans women looking good.
Absolutely.
And it's great. It's the same thing, when I hear Oprah talking about how she didn't see a woman of color on TV when she was a kid. It was very rare to see then when you see that,
Right.
whether it's on the cover of a magazine, it's like someone that's like you, it speaks to you.
Absolutely.
People go through it. Everyone who's discriminated goes through it. The trans community, the black community, people of color, plus size. When you see representation of yourself, that's a big thing for you, because it helps you with, what you're struggling with day to day, and in a world that told you that you weren't enough.
Absolutely. Well, I know that in part of what you mentioned was trans women dying at the hands of people who may not understand them. And I want to take a moment and read off 11 names of the women of color, trans women of color, who have been murdered thus far in 2019. And the first one is Dana Martin, murdered on January 6, 2019. Jaslyn Ware, murdered in March of 2019. Ashanti Carmen, murdered on March 30th, 2019. Claire Legato, murdered on May 14th, 2019. Malaysia Booker, murdered on May 18th, 2019. Michelle Washington, murdered on May 19th, 2019. Paris Cameron, murdered on May 25th, 2019. Chanel Lindsay, murdered on June 1st, 2019. Chanel Skurlock, murdered on June 5th, 2019. Zoe Spears, murdered on June 13th, 2019. And Brooklyn Lindsay, murdered on June 25th, 2019. So far, only 5 of the 11 murders have resulted in either warrants or arrests. So I want to ask you personally, after reading off these names, what feelings, what sentiment do you have when you hear those names?
It's 11 too many.
Yeah.
And it's really funny. It's not funny, but it's crazy that, and kind of eerie for me, because not only, was I one of those women that could have been killed, being young, I almost was murdered when I haven't talked about it a lot in public, but I was almost murdered in Miami years ago. And I think about, how it's just like there are no words really. And one of the names that you named on there, Zoe, I think it was Zoe Spears on there. I saw her. I didn't know her, but I saw her from afar the day she was murdered.
Wow.
I saw her in D.C. and I was with a friend of mine who pointed out that there was a girl right there. It was a trans girl there, and I was like, oh, and then later on I got a phone call saying, do you know the girl we just saw? Do you know she was just murdered? They just found her. Like, I'm like, are you, like, it's the weirdest thing for me. I don't understand how this is still happening. I don't understand, the hatred that people have in their heart for someone that they don't understand or that's different from them. It's just, I don't know what to say.
Yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow, because for me, I think about those cousins I told you about. And the interesting thing about Danielle and Pat, Danielle still had manly features. So you could tell. Pat was the more feminine looking one. So Pat was, as they said back then, and I don't know if they do that now, passable. So I can understand that even those two having different struggles.
Yeah, okay, so I want to speak to that because I have something that's called pretty privilege. And I get it. I know what it is. It's basically, trans girls who are, like you said, passable. And I understand it. I know what it is. Like,
Right.
I'm not one of those people just like, oh, I don't really like, I'm not aware of the fact that I get further in life as a trans woman than someone who might be 6'4"
Right.
and big hands and
Right.
a deeper voice, or very like features being more on the masculine side, don't present as female as much as they would like to.
Right.
The thing is, their struggle is no different than my struggle.
What's up next for you? Like, what can we expect from the Riley Knoxx?
Well, just this week alone is crazy. But, honestly, I'm living well past anything I ever dreamed for myself. They always say God can dream a bigger dream than you dream for yourself. I'm living way past anything I ever dreamed for myself. But the thing is, once you I believe that once you reach a goal, once you reach a dream, or you surpass that dream, it's not time to just sit back and enjoy it.
Right.
It's time to dream a bigger dream, And I do have a lot of things coming up in my career that, I can't really share. But I mean, still going to be performing.
Absolutely.
But what I really want to do is use my platform and use what I do to help someone else. And that's a community that's been underserved, which is my community,
Right.
the trans community. So I want to do more activism work. I want to do more involvement in that way. But I don't limit myself. That's just not how I've never lived my life that way. I hope I die working towards something amazing.
Awesome. Well, how can people best follow you?
You can follow me on Instagram, Riley Knoxx, that's with 2 X's. You can follow me on Facebook, and just recently my YouTube channel. You can go subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll keep you updated on where I'm going to be touring, and where I'm going to be, doing meet and greets, or there might be a book coming soon. You never know.
You never
It's
know.
a lot.
Well, listen, if that book drops, and let me know ahead of time.
I will.
And you are always more than welcome to be on the stage with me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Stay tuned for Jason Wallace next on One on One with Cory George.
With the groove, show proof, keep it smooth as I bust the move. Hey, yo, step it swiftly. You with me, keep up. If not, just stop, pop a squat, put your feet up. Read up, pay attention, listen to the melody. Remember what you heard, got my words to the spell of me. Top notch, got them all jumping like hopscotch. A jumping rope like double dutch in the air. Show me what you got, keep it hot like the heater. You thinking you
Fatherhood is a very personal subject to me. What is more personal is the portrayal of black fathers in mainstream media. It is also personal to my next guest, Jason Wallace. He is the director of the DC Mayor's Office of Fathers, Men, and Boys, and he is here to tell us more about the office's mission and initiatives. And so thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
So, so we talked about this before, and it's very interesting that I didn't even know about this office. And I want you to talk more about what the office was put in place to do.
Yeah, a lot of folks don't know that we're here, and we hope to change that. So the office focuses on men in the district, specifically men of color, tackling disparities and issues that we deal with.
And so when you talk about issues, I know that there is an issue in terms of how we are misrepresented in media. Outside of that, are there any other specific issues that you guys are trying to tackle?
Yeah, of course. I mean, our pillars are empowerment, empowering young boys of color for greatness, achievement, closing the achievement gap for boys of color in the district, as well as connections, and that's connecting fathers to fathers to build a strong support network, and then fathers to their children. So as it relates to the disparities, I don't have to tell you about, like, with truancy is a big thing. So a lot of boys that have issues with education may not be going to school. So figuring out ways, whether it's mentorship to get them in schools. And I'm glad that we're working on these issues, and I'm glad to have Mayor Bowser's support, full support, and working on issues related to black men.
So that means that you have to do a lot of groundwork, meaning being out in the public and reaching the public and making sure that the presence is known. So what's a typical working day like for you?
Typical. There's no typical working day. Every day is different, right? But I think a typical working day is making sure that, first off, I believe in making sure that we're listening to the community.
Okay.
So being out in the field, whether it's at an event or we create an event, and or having roundtable discussions to hear what men struggle with, what they want to see from their government. We want to make sure that men can support their families and they feel supported by their government. It could be one of those days. It could be hosting a panel discussion at one of our partner locations, whether it's about entrepreneurship or generational wealth, or finding ways or connecting men to getting jobs. So the day kind of switches around, but it's all rooted in supporting DC residents.
So I want to go back to the part where I talked about multimedia. From your standpoint, with what you see what's going on in multimedia, what do you feel is the most negative slant as it is? Is it more towards a black father's role in the family, or how black men are portrayed overall?
I think it's a consistent basis, right? So what it is that there was a study by Color of Change that showed the overrepresentation of black men in the media as either being criminals, not being able to support their families, or not being involved in their children's lives. The CDC had a report showing that black men are actually just as, or in most cases, more likely to be involved in their children's lives than anyone else. And that's a fact that's not known. So in the media, you see men of color, and that's, Hispanic men and immigrants are portrayed as gangsters 50% of the time.
Right.
So, so what you see is a lot of, so it's the two things that happen, right? So one thing is that the consequences are real life consequences. Mm-hmm. And one thing that happens is if a boy of color sees consistent images of what he will be in the future, it's extremely damaging to his self-esteem and self-worth. And it sets up a negative sense of expectations. The second thing that I feel is actually more dangerous is that people that don't have men of color in their lives, they see these images and it becomes their reality.
Absolutely.
And that's why you have judges that give harsher sentences out for black men than white men for the same crimes. Police officers that see sometimes black men's skin tone as a threat.
Absolutely.
And even with boys in education, black boys are suspended and expelled from school as young as kindergarten for doing the exact same things that their white counterparts are doing. So when it comes to the media, having these negative images up is damaging. Is damaging for the most part. And what we like to do is, and Mayor Bowser has an initiative called Flip the Script. And the Flip the Script campaign, it promotes positive images of Black and Hispanic men on buses, metro stations, and trains all throughout the city in the next couple weeks.
So I want to see if you heard about the latest headline. I think it came out last week, and I literally just thought about it when you talked about kids being expelled. There was a 10-year-old boy who was charged with assault.
For the dodgeball.
For dodgeball.
For dodgeball, yeah.
Now,
You play dodgeball, right?
first of all, I was always short. Secondly, I was always clumsy.
Yeah.
So I was always going to hit it first. So I didn't play because I knew at some point if I was close to the ball or whatever,
Yeah.
it was probably going to hurt because,
Yeah.
short people, they aim for the face first. Then it came out that the kid he hit had a health risk.
Yeah.
So my first question is, why was the kid playing?
Yeah.
My second question is, at 10 years old, I can't fathom that his intention was malicious.
Yeah.
Because dodgeball is a dangerous game. I don't care if you're
Yeah.
4 or 14.
Yeah.
So my opinion was, again, too much, too quickly. And as a father of Black boys, I was hurt because that could be my kid at school.
Yeah.
And I'm called because my kid is in handcuffs because he was playing dodgeball or basketball roughly.
Yeah.
And so what is your opinion on stuff like that?
So that was on an adult level, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I watched the story multiple times. I read a lot about it, and the boys, the boy that was hit was like, no, this is a friend of mine. He never felt it was malicious. His parents stepped in and did that. So how boys are viewed and criminalized, and how we're seen as, like, as a 10-year-old is seen as an adult, whether it be that young man or it be Tamir Rice, they're seen as an adult, as a child. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. And having images like Flip the Script can change some of those things. I mean, I'll give you a personal example. I was actually arrested. I was arrested when I was in high school. I got into a fight I think I was ninth grade, and I got into a fight. I don't think we even actually hit each other. It was just like, we were just like squabbling.
Right.
And I went to a school that was like gang infested, and it was just a rough school, and they had a protocol to just arrest. And I remember the police officer came, they put me in handcuffs, they took me down to the precinct over a fight that I talk to colleagues now that, my white colleagues now, they've gotten into fights all the time, and they just shake hands and go to the principal's office and no big deal. Like, I was arrested for that. So like, just how schools and how America views Black boys is different than how they view white boys or Hispanic boys or Native American boys. So I think it's not one thing that can solve the problem, I do believe that it's collectively a lot of us doing the same thing. And I think you can't wait for Hollywood to change the image. You got to change it for yourself. And you got to post your own pictures up online.
Yeah.
You got to post your stuff online. You got to encourage other people to do it. It's a bunch of networks where you can get involved. But changing that image starts with yourself.
Well, true. And that's why I feel, as a content creator, that's what I call myself, I'm charged with the duty of being knowledgeable of what I'm putting out.
Yeah.
Meaning, I control what you see. So if I want to see something that I don't see, I can create it. And as you say, we can't wait for Hollywood because most people in Hollywood have the same view of us.
Yeah.
So that's why we're cast as the gangsters. That's why we're cast as the drug dealers. Because
And even when there is a part that could be great for Black men, they may give it to someone else.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, so it's just making sure that we tell our own stories.
But and it's interesting you brought up being arrested, and it brought back a memory of my first arrest, and it wasn't as an adult. I think I was 12.
Yeah.
And I was in Louisiana, and that's where I'm from, and I know I usually walk by my junior high school to get to my aunt's house all the time. And I don't know how they found me, but someone had broke into one of the classrooms. Someone told somebody that they saw me walking by the school.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm only 5'7" now, I was much shorter then, right? So, and I was thinking, and at 12, I was like, yeah, I walk there almost 3 or 4 times a week.
Yeah.
And I was brought into the police station. I was questioned. I was drilled. From that point on, how I felt about myself changed.
Yeah.
I
It's
looked over my
traumatizing.
shoulder. I never felt secure in certain spaces. And how I felt about white people changed.
Yeah.
and
Definitely
as much as I would have not liked to have that experience, I think I had to have it.
Yeah.
And I could have gone either way, either being angry or saying, how can I change how I feel, and how can I change the mindset of how people view us.
Yeah.
So I think what the mayor is doing is very important. And
Yeah.
and I know that you talked about Flip the Script. I also want to talk about one of the other things that you guys are working on. It's called the manuscript. So
Yeah.
can you tell us more about that?
Yep, a manuscript is a red table talk style show in which we talk about men's issues, men's topics. So we get really heavy into the issues, whether it be challenges after 20 years of incarceration. How do you get back into society? And we have men that have faced that on the show. We have a licensed therapist that is actually working with that person to tackle some of the issues. We also had an episode around grieving and talking about specifically how do men grieve in a healthy way. And more importantly, I think how men grieve is challenging, but also how do you grieve as a father? How do you grieve as a husband?
Yeah.
Because it's a different thing, right? So
It is.
like if the whole house is in turmoil, like how do you grieve on your own time while still supporting your family and making sure you're the strong one?
And us being in the same roles, it is hard because you sometimes delay your strength so that way you can be a strength for other people.
Exactly.
Not knowing that because you may not be as strong, the whole unit is suffering.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think there's a misconception with men, right? Like that you have to be the strong one and that you have to be the one that's not crying that couldn't be further from the truth, because sometimes your family needs to see you, especially if you have boys, right?
Right.
Needs to see their dad have that same emotion. It opens up so many doors, and my wife and I had an issue, and I was trying to stay strong, and you know, but then once I broke a little bit, she was like, "Oh wow, I'm not going through this alone."
Absolutely.
And I was like, I never thought about how she might feel of going through something alone, because I looked like I was okay. But once she was able to see that I was going through it just as much as her, we were able to grow together and be stronger. So the manuscript is a series that we focus on issues that can provide healing. I want men to look at each episode, and say like, I see myself in that man, and he's on there crying, and he's on there being emotional, and it's okay for me to feel that way. It's giving license to me to show an emotion. And that's why we have a therapist on every single episode to make sure that they give tangible solutions to whatever is ailing people. And then we also have a clip where we connect people to DC resources. Say, if you're dealing with this, you can go here and talk to these people. And the person that you would see in the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs or in the Office of DC Health, that person's on camera. Actually, they're talking to the camera directly. Say, come see me. This is my name.
Right.
So when you walk in that door, that's the person you see.
And that's good. Well, that's good because when I visited the mayor's office, I saw faces I knew from from following them, and that was a point of being familiar with people.
Yeah.
But I do want to hear more about the manuscript and how how it impacts the overall mission of your office as soon as we come back. So you guys stay tuned.
I see you mobbing over her. Let's go. Let's mob. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, we mobbing. Come on, girl. Let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl. Hey, let's crawl. Hey, yo, let's crawl.
Hello, I am Jason Wallace. I'm the director of the Office of Fathers, Men, and Boys, and this is The Manuscript.
And we're back, and sitting here with me still is Jason Wallace from the DC Mayor's Office of Fathers, Men, and Boys. And when we left off, we were talking about the impact of the manuscript.
Yes.
What is your expectations of how the manuscript will impact the audience that's viewing it?
I think it'll allow people to open up more and to open up and have dialogue with their families about those topics regarding things that men deal with. I say this, there are several men that are currently running for president that are in their 70s. We don't even live that long. And a lot of the reasons is because we don't talk about certain things. And I think discussing issues that we're dealing with lets us open up, lets us cry. It gives us license to cry. It lets our spouses know that to say like, hey, one of the things we do in there, I ask a question and I say like, hey, what do you need from your wife? And then that's something that women may need to hear. So we hoping to open up some dialogue.
No, absolutely. I would tell people that from my point of view, being a man, I was naturally, I was taught to be reactive.
Yeah.
And not proactive. Meaning proactive means, oh, I feel something that's happening. Let me try to ward it off. Let me have a conversation now because, hey, this is bothering me.
Yeah.
Can you either help me or if you're the culprit, can you somehow help me to deal with it?
Yeah.
As opposed to waiting until I'm boiling underneath and by the time it comes out, it looks irrational, but we have a feeling about it.
Yeah.
And I also think that our interpretation of masculinity plays a huge part in how we feel we are to portray our feelings or the lack thereof, right? You know, because oftentimes it's the cliche where you hear the woman say, well, my husband doesn't talk enough, but the man says, well, she talks too much.
Yeah.
And I would say that being a nurturer requires you to talk because you have to figure out what the problem is.
Yeah.
And most women are raised as nurturers. Most men are raised to be the providers and the protectors, but nowhere in that equation says, oh, but when you're tired or when you're stressed out, you have an outlet.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when we don't have an outlet, we tend to lean towards a more dangerous set of options.
Yeah.
You know. So and so this is more personal, but I want to ask you. So when you look back at your growing up, how do you feel that the way that you were nurtured affected how you showed your emotions?
So I grew up with mostly men. So it was my dad and my brothers. So like crying wasn't a thing. Like it was just like, man up, stand up. You fall down, no matter what happens, and put some Robitussin on it.
Right.
And, just keep it pushing. Like that was just always the notion that you get. And I think it's unhealthy. It's unhealthy, and especially when the first time I was living with a woman is with my wife.
Okay.
Like I just grew up with just men, so
Right.
it was just a complete shift in dynamic, and I had to understand that it's okay to say how I'm feeling, right? So I think a lot of times, like men and women, they feel like they're clashing.
Right.
When they're married, like they're clashing, but sometimes it's just missing each other, right? It's just completely missing each other, and men need to say, like I said, oh, I'm mad about this and I'm mad about that. Sometimes you can just say, hey, it hurt my feelings.
Right.
That hurt my feelings, and she can pick up on that, like, oh, I know what that feels like, and then being able to, what I do with my wife is, right, I tell her how I'm feeling and what I need.
Okay.
And I'll say like, hey, this happened and I'm really upset about that. And I need some reassurance that you don't feel this way, that you feel that way. And she's like, okay. And I will give you that. I will give you that. Also, you heard about the whole 5 love languages thing.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great book, but people don't realize there's another book called The 5 Apology Languages.
Oh.
And people receive apologies in different ways. And I can say whatever I want to say, but if you don't say, I'm sorry because, it went right over your head.
It's like, wah. It's like
exactly. And if you don't say it first, if you
Right.
say it at the end, then I missed everything before.
Yeah.
And for me, you got to say like, hey, I'm sorry because this, and this. And then say everything else. Now I'm able to open up and hear
Absolutely.
it. And being a man, not being able to realize like you need it, but you're too afraid because women, right? So women have these images on TV. You hear it all the time where these, body images or women, or women in magazines, or, they dress this way or they look this way, and it affects women that don't look like the images they see in these magazines of these women that are not real, right?
Right.
It's the same thing for men.
Yeah.
Because if you turn on the TV, there's a man that has like that can shoot and drive, fly an airplane. And I saw one guy drive a car like 90 miles an hour. He hit the brake and spent around and did some stuff, and he had a bunch of abs. Like we don't got none of those abs.
Yeah.
but what it is that like most of my friends can't even drive a stick shift. So when you see these manly images of what a man is, it doesn't represent who you are.
Right.
It doesn't represent who you are as a person, and it breeds insecurity. And most of those issues, it breeds insecurity, and it makes you wonder, like, am I separate? Am I different? Is something wrong with me? And my wife, for instance, she grew up, her dad and her brother are mechanics. So
Okay.
she's really good with cars. I'm not. I grew up cooking. I'm a pretty good cook.
Hello.
So there was one time where I remember, and it hit me, she was outside changing the oil. And I was outside making dinner. But it's the role reversals, it's you're better at it. And
Yeah.
I'm better at it. Now we
Right.
just take it somewhere and get it done, you know.
Right.
Because,
Yeah, it's kind of like, wait a minute, like she's in the driveway and all your neighbors see you. Well, they don't see you.
They
They
don't
see
see me.
her under the car. I was
Under
like,
the car.
I was like, where is he?
Yeah, 'cause I'm like, I just take it down here to go get it fixed by somebody else.
Absolutely.
Like, but
Absolutely.
she's like, no, I want to do it. And she does it herself. She comes in the house, got oil all over her, and I make her a plate. Like, it's just, but it's an insecurity level that says that's not right. That's not natural. That's not manly.
Right.
And I hope with the manuscript, we can kind of shed some light on. And if you want to do that, then that's fine. But I'm less concerned about what is happening, and I'm more concerned about the reason why you think this is acceptable to talk to a woman this way, to not cry, or to cheat on your spouse and think that this is what men are supposed to do. Like, what's the reason why you think this is acceptable? And I think if we shed some light on this stuff, it opens up dialogues in a household where men don't share what they're feeling.
Well, I had a conversation with you on the phone, and one of the things that I say that it's a staple of what I say. When you look at the word man, it's a 3-letter subword of the word human.
Yeah.
And when you take the human out of the man, you leave him with the subset of expectations.
Yeah.
But when you allow him to be human, he can feel everything that we're supposed to feel.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not just about crying. It's about having emotion towards, because some people just don't cry.
Yeah.
But you can feel it.
Yeah.
Meaning, hey, I can say I'm sad, because to say I'm sad is not a masculine thing to say.
Yeah.
You hurt my feelings. No, we have hurt feelings.
Yeah.
We just react a different way to it.
And feelings are not gender specific.
No, they're not.
They're just feelings.
Yeah.
They just are.
Yeah, and not only that, but the reaction to feelings are, I tell my kids, I have boys, and I'm probably the biggest crybaby in my family. I will literally sit and watch YouTube and cry. And my kids like, oh God, you're crying again, Dad. I'm like,
Yeah.
but they know it's comfortable. So when they
Yeah.
come to me, it's like we have full-grown conversations that I never had with my father.
Yeah.
About, because I always say, okay, this is the feeling, so how do you feel about it? Are you okay?
Yeah.
And then I said, well, would you like me to do something about it?
Yeah.
Because I give them the tools to fix it themselves, but I also give them the tools to explore options of expression. Because, so for example, anger. Anger itself is a natural emotion, but for some of us, we think it's a bad thing to be angry.
Yeah.
And I say anger's not bad. It's reaction to your anger
Yeah.
that can hurt you or someone else. So I think having a show like that offers the balance of explanation, saying this is the example of kind of what I would have hoped to be, and now I can see that it's, that there's a freedom there.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of take it back to a happier level. I want you to talk to us about Father Fun Day.
Father Fun Days. Father Fun Days. So a hypothesis of the office is that men that may be economically disadvantaged may not spend as much time with their children because they can't afford it. So Father Fun Days is a day in which, a free day where you come out and we cover the cost, whether it be fishing. We did a fishing trip with, we did a basketball game. We give tickets out. We also provide kids and the dads and their families to go to the mayor's suite and sit in the mayor's box at the national stadium and watch a baseball game. We have golfing coming up. So we just do fun things to kind of get families out and about,
Right.
and we cover all the costs. We make sure it's fun and it's engaging. And that's Father Fun Day is also good because it connects fathers to fathers.
Okay.
And I remember when I had my son, I was 31 years old, and I felt like I didn't know what to do. I still feel that way a little bit now, but I feel like I just didn't know what to do, and it was a scary feeling, right? And I couldn't imagine being 16 or 17 years old, having to be a father. But I meet 16 and 17-year-olds that are fathers often.
Yeah.
So Father Fun Days allows them to come in with their children and meet another father that's in his 40s or 50s or 30s that can say, hey, young man, that's a normal feeling. It's okay.
Oh, yeah.
And let me get connected with you. So when you're having issues and when you're dealing with your spouse, or you don't know how to swaddle, my swaddle game is nice too. I'm good with the swaddle. But when they don't know how to swaddle, like, I can help you through it. And people think about mentorship. They think about like high school kids and
Yeah.
boys. Like, I have mentors. I'm 34. I have mentors.
Absolutely.
And everybody needs a mentor, somebody that looks out for them, that they can call whenever they're going through something is important. So Father Fun Days, in addition to connecting fathers to their children, it connects fathers to other fathers that can help support them in their growth no matter where they are in their lives.
You know what, and that makes sense. And I want to say, but I want to piggyback on something you said. I have kids, 15 and 12, and I tell people every year is something different.
Yeah.
As soon as I think I have it,
Yep.
something new happens. I'm like, oh God, you didn't tell me this was going to happen next.
Yep.
And that's why I tell people, like the young fathers or people who want to be parents, ask me what it's like. I'm like, I can't tell you.
Yeah.
I can only tell you to anticipate everything.
Yeah.
And to also understand that no matter how much education you have,
Yeah.
no matter what family background you have, it doesn't prepare you for your family.
Yeah.
But have the wherewithal to understand that it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay, and you will make mistakes. You may turn the water a little bit hot when he's a baby, and but they'll scream and tell you.
Yeah.
Or you may embarrass him like I embarrassed my 50-year-old just by breathing. Literally, Dad, you're breathing. Just stop. Just okay.
I can't imagine that with my 2-year-old.
No, he went from being Daddy's boy and always holding my hand to, okay, Dad, I'll see you
Can
after
you drop me
school.
off at the corner
Literally,
and I'll
he
walk
told
the
me the
rest of the
last
way?
day of school, Dad, can you drop me off like back here because my friends are up there. I was hurt for 30 seconds of my life.
And when they're younger, right? Like that change happens by week. Like every single week with a 1-year-old is different than the week before. As soon as I got how to do one thing,
Yeah.
it changed. And then when you're with your spouse, like it's trying on the relationship, having a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old in the house, and having another man that you can reach out and call. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you grounded and get positive reinforcement. So being able to do that, we also have working with the Office of Returning Citizens Affairs to keep fathers connected to their families once they're incarcerated. So making sure that the custodial guardian can get a packet, we can send it out. So those short conversations that someone has with their children aren't catching up as much as it's getting rooted to what's going on in the kids' lives. Working with another office about helping men that cannot pay their child support get jobs so they can start paying child support instead of just getting them locked up.
Yeah.
So there's so many things that our office is focusing on, and it's we're also working on policy recommendations, and it's pretty involved. And I'm so happy to have Mayor Bowser's support specifically as it relates to one of her things when her swearing in her speech. She mentioned that an intentionality around Black men supports and Black resources for Black men. So I'm excited that she's gone so heavy in that direction.
So I want to know, because I did go to the website and I saw that there was a volunteer form.
Yeah.
So is that for residents to volunteer for certain events or certain things that's going on?
Yeah.
How can residents become more involved in what you guys are doing?
Great question. So cfmb.gov.
Okay.
You can email us there, and it's different ways. So sometimes we need folks to come out to our Father Fun Days because a lot of times we have kids just that are just there. So connecting them to a mentor. Sometimes we connect people to one of the amazing nonprofits in Washington, D.C. that service boys of color that we can connect them with. And sometimes it's with something I'm going to ask you to do is come out and on the first day of school and show up in a nice suit and just give an applause.
Awesome.
So it could be as light as that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to thank my guests Riley Knoxx and Jason Wallace for joining me today. If you'd like to find out more about the show, view prior episodes, or suggest show topics and guests, just visit oneononewithcory.com and follow us on Instagram at oneononewithcory. And remember, every tough conversation is the right conversation to have. And as always, be great to yourself so that you can be great to others. Bye for now.